Strategy Collaborative. We are just admitting a whole bunch of folks, so we're going to give it just a second. But per our usual flow, if you've just jumped in, say hi, and into chat, please share a recent win or challenge in relation to leading strategy, organizational performance, OKRs, culture, anything in that realm. So it's taken a minute, obviously, for everybody to get in, but if you're here, we'd love to just have you say hi. Where are you hailing from? Hi from Oslo. Good to see you. Lauren from New Jersey. So fun. Rasmo, good to see you as well. Fantastic. And please add a recent win or challenge as your role as leading organizational strategy, performance, change as well, I'm sure. We have just a ton of folks joining us. It's fantastic. Let's give everybody just a minute. Vic, good to see you too. Love seeing the cameras on. If you want to turn your cameras on and say hi, give us a wave. We love that. Stacy, good to see you. Fantastic. Jan, all right, John. Whoop, whoop. Cool. Here we are, a recent winter challenge. Throw that into chat. A lot of people joining, a lot of familiar faces, a lot of new faces. Jim, good to see you as well. We always love to see everybody on camera. Okay, fantastic. Bryan, can you hear me?
Bryan can hear you, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Could you hear me that whole time or not? Was I just talking
the whole time?
You could. Okay, yes. Good. Maybe I just got muted on accident. That's all right. We should do that sometimes. Good morning, everybody. My name's Erica Olson. I'm your host today. We have a full house, so to speak. It is May. Morning, evening, or afternoon around the world. We have a global representation of strategy leaders joining us today. And of course, please put into chat a recent winter challenge and of course where you're hailing from, because that's always great to see. We're going to get rolling because I think everybody is here. Zoom has caught up with us, which is always so fun. I've introduced myself, again, mentioning if you want to turn your camera on and give us a wave, we'd love to see you. And Meg, good to see you. Dr. Daniel, good to see you as well. Feel free to stay on camera. Feel free to say hi and put it off too. We know how that is. And we're happy to be here. We're here for 60 minutes to be with other leaders of organizational strategy, performance, and culture. And today we are talking about defining, aligning, and prioritizing your best strategic moves. So as always, our goal is to provide you in 60 minutes, now 55 minutes, an action-packed set of content, practical tips, ideas, ways of thinking that you can use in your practice as leading organizational strategy. So that's our goal for today. I'm going to take just a minute to get us oriented really fast. We always reinforce the fact that we are here as leaders of strategy because all of you have the job in your organization to create the future for your organizations, for the communities that you work in, for the regions that you impact. And that's a big job. That's a big job. And it's a cool job. And that's why you all do it. That's why we do it. So these are the 6 practice areas that the Strategy Collaborative is really focused on. You will always see us going deep in one of these 6 areas. It's important that we have a big, bold vision, a winning strategy. We align our teams. We have a quarterly rhythm of execution and agility. We communicate compellingly, and we have a strong culture. Today, we're talking about the winning strategy piece, and there's a bit of the aligned teams in there too. So that's what we get to do today. That's where we're spending our time. I recognize that in your role, you're working on one or a couple of these, but most of the time, not all of them at the same time and at the same level of energy. So the collaborative is really interesting in terms of what topics we put on and where we should focus. So please know we try to be pretty broad brushed in covering all of these pieces. But as always, If there's something you would like us to focus on, we want to hear from you, because this is really all about all of us. So if there's an area that you'd like to put some attention on, please let us know. We're open for input all of the time. So we always get together on Thursdays. The first Thursday, which is today, is open to everybody. It's a general session for anyone that is a general collaborative member. And then the other Thursdays of the month are for those individuals that want to plus up their work, dig a little deeper. We call that CSO Pro. So that is a paid membership. We have our Ask Us Anything roundtables. And then on the third Thursday, we go deeper in this subject. So that's how this works. For those of you that have been with us since last fall, you know the drill. This is our programming. We recognize you cannot come every Thursday because that's crazy. But if you are a pro member, we make sure to send out all the communication and the content after the fact, for sure. So if you're not a pro member, join us. I'll talk a little bit about that later. Just wanted to mention this. We got an amazing email from one of our pro members. Thank you so much. There's a lot of words on this screen, but it basically says the work that we're all doing has really transformed that individual's organization and planning this year. And that's our goal. So we're really trying to do that. We're really trying to make a space for all of us to come together in this really important work, and quite frankly, really dynamic work. And I just have to say, I was a listener last Thursday to one of the AMAs, and we had this great conversation about what strategy is really all about, and are we really doing good work in the strategy piece of our practice. And it was fantastic. And so that's kind of the stuff that we get to do. That's what we get to do on the other Thursdays, just be a little bit more, casual and go a little deeper and kind of like muck around a little bit in some of the subjects. So join us if you'd like to muck around, as I'd like to say. So with that, we are talking about defining, aligning, and prioritizing our best moves. Bryan Sargent, hi, Bryan. He is our leader today. Bryan is also a collaborative member. He raised his hand and said, hey, I have a really cool tool that I've created in my practice that I think the collaborative could really benefit from. And we're like, yeah, absolutely. That's what this is all about. So Bryan's going to walk us through that. But I kind of just wanted to share maybe a little foreshadow for everybody. There's a couple things that Bryan's going to share, but one of them that I think is really powerful, or a thought that's really powerful, is just thinking about how your teams are thinking, and really providing a little bit of a perspective to help us like assess how are our teams thinking. So that's like one bit. And then the other bit, Bryan's going to really share a cool tool that he uses to help align teams to prioritize your best moves. And I will tell you, half the work that we all get to do is creating smart decisions in the workshops and the strategy formulation that we lead. Last month, we talked about really cool facilitation techniques. This month, we're gonna share. Bryan's gonna share a tool. He's also gonna say, hey, if you want to use this tool, it's available to the first 5 pro members that raise their hands. So that's just something to think about. You might want to use this. You might also think about the fact that this is something you might want to use as you're refreshing your plan for 2024, depending upon where you are in planning. So those are all things just to think about. But again, just the reason we're talking about this is because our work is about creating alignment and creating smart decisions with the leaders of organizations, and not just the loudest voice in the room. So today is another angle at how we do that in a really smart way. So before I pass the mic to Bryan, I want to just ask really fast, high functioning executive teams have clear holistic direction, right? So that like there's a holistic direction and we're clear about it. We've defined it, we're aligned, and we're prioritizing our choices. So saying that one more time, that's kind of a mouthful because I screwed it up. So let's try it again. High functioning executive teams have a clear future, they're aligned, and we're effectively prioritizing. And I would just love to know, on a scale of 0 to 10, put your number in chat for the leadership team that you're on, a leadership team that you're leading, or a leadership team you're consulting. Just pick one, it doesn't matter. Where are you on a scale of 0 to 10? 0 is like, we're nowhere close. We are like, woo, way far away. And 10 is like, holy smokes, we're crushing it in all three of those areas. Like, wow, don't mess anything up, I'd love to know, just put it into chat. It's fun to see where everybody is, 0 to 10. Where are you? So we're looking like we're tending a little bit towards the above 5 range. That's kind of cool. Nice, amazing. Okay. So some of the work that Bryan's going to do, and keep throwing those in, is keep throwing your numbers in, because it really gives Bryan some good perspective and all of us. So our goal and some of the ideas that Bryan's going to share is to help us move up the scale, move from your 6 to 7 or 7 to 8 or 8 to 10, and how that might happen. So with that, Bryan has been a connected, engaged Strategy Collaborative member. Fantastic. A lot of you have heard his voice on the call. Innovex Management is his company. Bryan, you're hailing from where in the UK?
I live in Bath in the UK, which is about 100 miles west of London.
Fantastic. And we always sound smarter when we're from that island. So we just, I already feel smarter. This is so great.
If that's what you think.
That's right.
I'll take that.
That's right. So Bryan's going to share some awesome stuff. And Bryan, you're going to grab the screens from me. So go for it and do that. But we're going to put Bryan's LinkedIn.
Shall I do that now?
Yeah, grab it. Go for it. Please, Ryan, if you wouldn't mind putting Bryan's LinkedIn in chat. If you haven't connected with Bryan on LinkedIn, do it. We always want to make sure that we're creating connections between our members. And right now we're using LinkedIn to do that. So that would be fantastic. Bryan, take it away. Let's learn how to get more aligned, defined, and prioritized.
Thank you, Erica. What a privilege it is. And thank you to all of you. That testimonial that somebody wrote in, the feedback there, says it all for me, that I've learned a hell of a lot from this journey with you guys. So I'm very grateful and privileged to have this slot. So before getting this slot, before doing this now today, I had quite a lot of conversations with Erica and Ryan, and we decided probably the best thing to do was for me to share probably the most useful tips that I've come across, that I've found in the last 15 years, together with that tool, about how to move the mind of the senior execs towards strategy, and to align them and to give them the tools to be effective at defining their strategy. After all, the strategy is the way to win in the future. So that's what we've got today. And I would encourage anybody, please, to ask any questions throughout or interrupt. I'm going to be concentrating on shouting out here. So either Erica or Ryan, jump in and stop me if there's some great questions coming up. I hope that's all right with everybody. So the first thing I'm going to bring up here is something that I use to get attention from the senior team, possibly the senior leader, and to start that process of getting them to step back from the inevitable daily whirlwind of work and to think about where they are and what they need to do to think very differently from the strategic point of view. And we've often in this collaborative talked about maturity of businesses, and that is a very important point. So this is a useful way of describing this. So what I would typically start with is talk about the early stages. So this applies more so to businesses that are sub, say, $10 million turnover, probably still being run by the founder, or at least there's a very strong whiff of the founder there. So in the early phases of the business, they're just this kind of chaotic, trying to find a product and a market that fit. And that chaos goes round and round in a little loop until you get some traction, you get some early growth, and you start then, hopefully, finding a model, a way of reproducing your business in a scalable way so that you're increasing the revenue without equally increasing the costs. That's the idea of the scalable model. Okay, fine. So that chaos has largely, let's say, taken place there. And of course, good news, you get more customers, more employees, more products, more problems, more competitors, the whole thing's going on there. And that's the beginning of the need for change, at least the first evolutionary stage. Because at that point, then complexity rises, and almost inevitably, every business I've ever worked with, several hundred, a few hundred, run then into problems at that early stage where growth either declines or becomes very erratic. Good year, bad year, good year, bad year. And the owners are very stressed. Or the senior team, not necessarily the owners, they're very stressed, they're stretched. The senior managers are becoming more and more stretched. And there's a little bit of uncomfort coming through the business. Employees starting to complain a little bit. It isn't like it used to be. And the number of employees has got to 50, if they're lucky, 100 even, really stretching it. And at those points there, revenue, say, size of the business, we call it the revenue, is likely to either stay constant, very rare, or be under threat. And what's really needed there is this point of evolution. That's evolution really in the mindset of the leaders. They need to start structuring their planning and actually doing planning as a thing, not just something they do in the corridor or in the shower in the morning. It's got to be structured, deliberate direction that everybody shared. And that's what I found. And this is a conflation really of some work by Larry Greiner, if anybody knows of Greiner's work, published in Harvard Business Review years ago, and Ishak Adiz's and my own experiences. This is here. And of course, actually, in real life, there's many points of evolution. And just before the need to evolve, why would you evolve? Why would you change? Well, typically it's preceded by a problem. There's a heck of a challenge, a crisis sometimes in a business, and that demands. So I put in a couple of there, like clarity and focus is very typically the beginning, maybe decentralization, some sort of pushing, delegation, putting decisions close to the point of impact, or divisionalization. It varies as businesses go up. What you also find, though, I find anyway, is that as the businesses grow, some aspects of the business aren't evolved very well. Some aspects are very immature, and maybe some bits of the business are mature. And of course, typically the leaders will press harder on the things they're doing really well and kind of hope the other things go away. I don't know if that's resonating with anybody, but certainly that's my experience. So I use this as a way of explaining something about where they are and why they feel certain ways. And then there's another model. Now, maybe some of you have come across this. Is a McKinsey model, 3 horizons, often misunderstood, but it's a useful way, different way of thinking now. The axes are the same, but this is about the way the minds of the strategy team, the senior team, are thinking. So typically, the horizon 1 bit is about what you might call operational strengthening or functional strength, where you become very good at that sort of stuff. When you're in the fire, fighting the fire the whole time, you know where your strengths and your weaknesses are. You know what you've got to twist a bit more. You can brainstorm that out. You've got your list, your to-do list, and your annual budgets. No problem. Got to do that. Got to fix it. Got to make sure your platform for operating your business is good, obviously. Horizon 2 is less obvious in any business and often not practiced at all. That's more thinking about, okay, well, where is our market? Actually, quite often, first of all, what exactly is our market? What's the segmentation? Who are we really serving here? And once we understand that, or the number of segments, what are those markets? Where are they going? Where are they evolving? What are the evolving needs? What are our competitors coming up with? And simultaneously, which makes it really difficult thinking, what are our capabilities? What are we developing? And what do we need to start developing so that as the market changes and evolves and its needs changes, our capabilities are matching that? If we call that right, we're going to be in a great position in 3 to 5 years. If we call it wrong, well, we won't be. If we don't call it at all, we're probably not going to be in a good position. So the answer is, let's start thinking about Horizon 2. And that's a different form of thinking altogether. It's not the day-to-day stuff, really requires people to take themselves out of their own boots and think ahead. Right, and Horizon 3, just to complete the canvas here, Horizon 3 is a speculative, small element of what you might do once Horizon 1 and 2 are reasonably in good shape. What could we invest in? What little side ventures could we do that might actually, in more than 5 years or thereabouts, really give us a head in the market. And that's a really useful model that I find that once the senior team have got their head around this concept of evolving and changing as a business grows, it doesn't just happen. They've got to deliberately do it. This then is about their thinking. Are they thinking about these different chunks of time, even though they're kind of gray edged? They're not black and white. But I find that a useful way of thinking. Does that make sense to everybody? Anybody got any thoughts on that one?
Bryan, I wanted to just jump in here for a second and volley on this a little bit. So I love this 3 horizons, and I wanted to just comment too. I know the language that Bryan was just using was super business oriented, because of course, that's the best practices of, but worth also noting the application of this in the nonprofit space, in the government social sector space, of course. And one thing I think, Bryan, just to talk about this, and I think we wanted to ask some feedback from the group as well, is not only are we using this horizon thinking, this horizon to help evaluate our executive team's thinking, but also to know the substance of what we're planning for. Is that fair?
Yeah, exactly right. And thank you for keeping me straight on the non-profit stuff. My language has been all about profit stuff. I find it, and I do a bit, not a huge amount, but a bit in the non-profit. And it's exactly the same, really. The concepts are exactly the same.
Absolutely. So I would love to just ask the team for a second, just again, putting yourself, ask everybody on the call today, putting yourself and thinking about the executive team that you're on, the executive team that you're leading, or a client of yours that you happen to be facilitating. Is the team just focused on Horizon 1, Horizon 2, or are we actually, starting to instigate thinking around Horizon 3? So just love like a 1, 2, or 3. And I just want to comment on this, just as you are thinking about this. I was reflecting on a couple of clients that I'm working with right now, and man, I'm really trying to get us like an articulated Horizon 2, but we are super stuck in Horizon 1 because like the foundations are just like that, we're just churning, right? We're just like, we can't get settled on our operations. So I'm just having a hard time, getting the team to even think about the strategic growth of the organization. And then I feel like I'm not doing my job. And Horizon 3, forget about it. Conversely, I have some other executive teams that are very much like, they're chomping at how do we articulate our strategic direction more clearly and in a more, in air quotes, strategic manner. And Bryan, I know you're going to dig into that a little bit more. Love of all the feedback that's coming in right here too. A lot of us sort of between 1 and 2. Meg, love 3, 2, and 1. Awesome. Everyone all the time. I know, boy, that movie I love that movie title, right? Everywhere, all at once, all the time, or whatever that is, right? So great. So true. We feel that, right? Awesome. Okay, fun. Again, I think what's important about this, and Bryan, is this true, is just to give perspective to say, oh, this is why our conversations are the way they are, or this is how we can help a team move from one place to the next. We're not going to jump from 1 to 3, right? So just again, perspective for us as we're working through helping people, helping teams define where they're going, align, and prioritize. So awesome. Back to you, Bryan.
Thank you. Much better said than me, Erica. Brilliant. Thank you very much. And thanks everybody for your feedback on that. That's fantastic. Okay. So a couple more points just before we go into this tool that I wanted to share with you. This is a lovely model, which I also use with clients. And I put it up kind of about now. Chap called Roger Martin, pretty well-known strategist, came up with this lovely stuff. So cascading down, theoretically, of course, from what do you want to achieve? Where are we going to play? How will we win? What do we need to win? And how are we going to go about implementing it? Okay, and there's the downward arrows, fine. Of course, the little dotted ones coming back up actually says, well, oh, hang on a minute. If we get a bit too ambitious on any one of these steps, we've got to go back and reset our ambition. So there's a kind of a whirlwind of going backwards and forwards, up and down this. whilst simultaneously thinking about your horizons and what stage your evolution is. So no wonder strategy is a bit of a scary, big monster. You've got all these dimensions going on, and you can map some of these bits very, very roughly onto those horizons. So down at the bottom end, where everybody's very familiar, got that, and Erica, you were saying sometimes the management teams are just stuck down there. Well, yeah, you've got to throw them a bone because things are probably really tough. And so no wonder they are. And it's about sometimes just slicing off a bit, a modicum of time to think about the Horizon 2 stuff, put it into the context of this Roger Martin cascade, and sort of slightly begging them to do it and slightly fearing or showing the fear if we don't, we're going to be in a bit of trouble. So that's another model there. Just wanted to shout that one out. I often, to get around what at this point with executive teams sometimes feels like an enormous mountain. They don't want to climb it. It's too much. Let's not bother. So I try to break it into sort of state. Let's just go for a baby strategy version 1. Let's just get something which is pretty much closer to a plan than a full-on strategy. And it's just get started, get buy-in to the process, get the teams talking, the top team talking about their business in a collegiate way, sometimes less tension might help sometimes, and get to start beginning to understand actually the need to think about Horizon 2, to think strategically. Now, I know I'm sounding a bit sort of rude to most of the senior managers there. I don't mean to be, because actually massive respect and shout out to them all. They're up to their eyeballs fighting alligators all day long. And it's easy not to do that long-term thinking. And then we come on to strategy 2, which can take a few months. We're going to do a bit of market research, user need research, really understand what our core capabilities are that actually got us to where we are. So that stuff there, I try and break it down, try and make the whole beast look a bit more digestible.
Hey, Bryan, before we move along, and I know we want to do so, but just 1 minute, Jan was pointing out that in the book, there's also Horizon 0, which is fixing everything from yesterday. So just to point out, and what I love too is we're all really steeped in this work. So it's awesome to be like, oh yeah, that's right. There's all these other pieces of these concepts that we should pump up the volume on. So that's great. Put some attention on. And then there's a question that I just wanted to comment and see what your thoughts are on this that Jan asked, which is, should everyone be in all of the horizons? Often more future innovation requires dedicated resources. So,
great. Okay, brilliant. First of all, love the concept of Horizon 0, which is kind of the legacy of problems. And every business, every organization has got it. And Horizon 1 thinking is about bringing in your problems, because we've got to fix them. Some problems you might have to live with, but some are just going to mean that any strategic plan you have will flounder. So let's say your culture's really awful. There's a hugely negative feeling throughout the entire set of people in the organization. Values are not adhered to. Unfairness in the way people are treated throughout the organization. If that's there, then deploying a strategy top to bottom is going to be really difficult. So sometimes, yes, your legacy has to be addressed in the functional strengthening piece, the Horizon 1. And then the top team has to agree that they've got this problem and put the work in to get strategy ready to put it. So in effect, Horizon 1 is often getting a platform ready such that Horizon 2 can go onto it. What was the second part of the question there, Erica? Sorry, I got.
Should everybody be involved in all the horizons? And
no, but a bit yes. So the senior team should have a collective view that they all understand what's going on. They all agree to the general plan at the top level, the direction we're going, the positioning we're going to adopt, how we're going to attract people who want to use our services, how we're going to fulfill those demands, whatever they are, be they profit or non-profit related, right? So yeah, the whole team, the top team, has to have a basic understanding of how that's going to happen. And the direction of the business going. They need to cascade it through their teams. They need to support it and sponsor it. Absolutely. However, what they don't need to do is all the heavy lifting. Market research, for example, going out, doing in the interviews with clients, sometimes maybe a little bit because they might have specialist knowledge or a particular contact or something, or understanding doing an analysis of all of the competitors that are out there, some sort of mystery shopping, for example. No, the top team don't have to do all the heavy lifting. That's what the strategy team or maybe some outsourced resources can do. Did that answer the question, Erica? Or did I manage to swerve that one?
Yeah, nope, I think so. And then just a comment, Sanjay shared a really cool book related to lessons learned from the past are important. And so Sanjay, thank you. And we'll make sure to include that in the post-session summary. Bryan, let's talk.
Absolutely. Lessons from the past, vital. And in fact, the legacy, the Horizon Naught stuff. Yeah, you've got to deal with it. You've got to face it. Okay, moving on. So next up is what I've ended up doing then to start the facilitation of moving forward on Horizon 1, typically, maybe a bit of Horizon 2, is some sort of assessments. So I've developed little assessments around all of these things here, which is kind of useful. It's a nice little toolbox to have. And if you're talking to a client, then you've got a number of areas. Very often I find a client will say they've got a problem in a certain area. And actually, when you delve a bit more into it, the problem is elsewhere. And so being able to assess things, yeah. So there's a bunch of different assessments that are useful to do. But today, the tool I wanted to share with you, this one around management itself. So I'm talking about management of the organization. So, I mean, you could look at sales or demand generation, fulfillment, and all that sort of stuff. And obviously, we can spend a lot of time about assessing how well you do strategy, but this is about the management piece. It's something that is really Horizon 1 and will support Horizon 2 being in place. I hope that makes sense. This is the business management framework, which it's just my own little invention. So you won't find it. Well, you might find something on Google, but it isn't this. Well, it may not be. Anyhow, if you think of it in 3 layers and 3 things across, if you build a house without a foundation, it will probably go up. It'll stay up for a bit, but as soon as the wind gets up a bit, or there's a little bit of an earth tremor or something, it's probably not going to do very well. So quite often organizations can get going and even miss some of the foundations, but it's worthwhile assessing how well the foundations are built at some point so that you can say, well, do we need to repair some of that stuff? Maybe 1 or 2 of you are thinking, well, that's Horizon 0 stuff. Our underpinning really underneath what we see in the business and needs to be placed there. So that's the foundation stuff. And then really the other 2 layers, structure and momentum, getting activity into a framework there. What this is a collections of areas of the business which need to be looked at. So going through them there, what we're going to do, I hope this is all right with you all, is I'm going to show the business management frameworks, the structure here, which is really very simple. It's 9 elements, 3 by 3. And then I'm going to show you, or at least explain how I go through the process of assessing this with the senior team to get the buy-in and to sort of cooperatively get their views, which helps the alignment and argue out differences of opinion so that we can then prioritize the way forward. So that's hence the define, align, prioritize. Here's the next layer up: organization, people, standardization, control. I'm going to go through those in a bit more detail with Erica in just a moment. We're going to debate those out. That's the general framework. These will come out on the slides, so you don't have to screenshot it or anything like that. I find this general approach pretty good. If you're asked, okay, yeah, but hang on a minute, where do our financial performance is, how is our financial performance being assessed in here? Well, it isn't. It's a different assessment. This is about the management of the organization, not the finances, not how well you're doing on sales or demand generation. This is how you're managing it. I hope that's clear. So in each of these areas then, at the top level of assessing a business, it's useful to ask the assembled group, for each of those 9 elements, we're going to score 0 to 10, how important is this element to our business now? And how good are we at it now? And so what we do is we collect that, and these are just made up scores, obviously, from as we go through. And I'm going to show you how I do that in just a second. But by going through this and describing each of those 9 elements and then scoring it and getting the top team, whatever it is, 5, 6 or so people, to start scoring it, you also then tease out differences in scoring. Hope that makes sense. But more importantly, that to do the prioritization, if something's really important and we're really rubbish at it, that surely has got to be the priority that we address. If there's something not so important to us right now, standardization. We've really standardized our products. We've got our processes mapped out. We've got great IT systems. We've invested in all that lot. Well, it's not so critical to us right now. And we're pretty good at it. Well, that's a low priority. So really straightforward. And what you do is you take the output from this and you can build a very simple chart for each of those 9 elements showing what the priorities are. This isn't a dictating sort of system, because at this point then it's about debate. Is it just the one on the left that's really burning us at the moment, or is it the top 3? Let's have a little debate, folks, around the table on where we need to start pressing from a management of the business and Horizon 1E type things. And to help with that, and I was saying the little technique I use here is a mobile phone. So what I typically do, I found it works over the years, is ask the team, the group with typically the senior management team, to bring their mobile phones. And when I describe, so that holding a facilitated meeting, I'm running through these things, introduce the whole of the topic there, and then one by one go through each of those elements, vision and mission, for example, to start with, and ask them to score it. So a couple of things happen. I asked them to spend 1 minute thinking about their scores. How important? How good are we? And then enter it on that mobile phone. And then it pops through, because it's just a Google form, just pops through a little spreadsheet, which I've made before. And then you can show on there how many people have voted, let's say 9 out of 10 for something, and a couple of people. And I find this almost every single time, there's always a collection of folk voting in one area there. 1 or 2 who are different. At that time, it's anonymous, but what's great is you can say, okay, look, you can stay anonymous, but is there a reason anybody put that such a low score down there? I've never had anybody not declare their hand, but it's great that they feel safe. So out they come with their views, and on we have a great debate. So all the 9 elements and the sub-elements, many sub-elements underneath that, which we'll mention in a second, come out, they get discussed, and we look at the business from all the perspectives. That's why I'm sort of thinking this is a reasonable tool for defining your needs, aligning the top team, and then prioritizing what you do. Hope that's okay. I'll carry on now just for the next stage. Erica, have I gone off the rails here? Is everybody left? Okay. So
we're with you. Yep, totally. And there's just some questions on the details on some of those sections, but you're going to get to that.
We are in just a minute. Yeah, exactly. Totally. And there are heaps of that. We could be here for a long time, but we will come across a bit of that now. So, right. So there you are. There's the elements on the top left. You get your prioritized list there. And then another little tool, which we're definitely not going to look into today, very simple prioritize method. So let's say of the 9, we've got 2 or 3 of the 9. We think actually they're really burning us. They're really important. We've got to do something about that. PDQ. So then you brainstorm out the actual initiatives that we can take, assign them to the folk in the room, and roughly how long they're all going to take. It's got to be broad brush, definitely 80-20, if not 70-30. It hasn't got to be accurate at this point. The point is generating some simple Gantt charty type thing at the bottom there, so that when people leave this meeting or 2 meetings, I find it's often 2 meetings, they've got something that they can go away with, and hopefully the most senior person there can then facilitate more meetings or their monthly reviews. How are we doing against our grand plan. So that's how that works and feeds down into actionable stuff.
Bryan, before you go and talk through the details on this for a second, I just want to drop in some thoughts on this and see if you agree. So just briefly, there's a million assessments in the world, right? We've all seen them done or whatever. And our job as organizational leaders is to identify where we are right now in our evolution as an organization, in the planning, execution, strategy formulation, culture development, effectiveness of the leadership team, development of the leadership team, and bust out the tools that help move people along. And we would agree, I think we would all agree, if the leadership team's not aligned, the organization's not going anywhere, right? Like that is a problem. So what's cool about this, and the reason I thought it was so cool to share this, in addition to, Bryan having such great expertise in this area, is just to say, half the battle is having a way to have individual contribution that is displayed in a data-driven dialogue that creates a view of the temperature in the room and deadening the loudest voice and also elevating the quietest voice. And so I kind of just wanted to say that. And then the other thing I wanted to comment on is the power of using this might be when you're thinking about where does the focus of our planning and strategy efforts need to be to strengthen the management of the organization. Here is a holistic, robust, comprehensive way to think about that and identify the top 2 or 3 areas that Bryan's going to talk about in a second, and then create action plans around that, right? So anyhow, so just kind of wanted to talk about when do you use this and then why would you use it? So Bryan, back to you.
Yeah, that was brilliant. I think you should have given this whole talk.
Oh, well.
That was really good. The way about deadening the loud voice, or the highest the highest paid person's opinion, that sort of thing. Right, we are getting slightly tight on time. We've got another maybe 8 minutes or something like that with me. So we're going to race through these at torpedo speed. So typically I start bottom left and I work the way up, doing that scoring-y thing. I typically explain what I mean by, let's say, vision and mission. I throw the word purpose in there. If the company has already, and very often they haven't, but if they've already had a go at writing their purpose, their vision, and their mission, that's great. And the question's there then, well, are they still realistic? Are they still up to speed? Does everybody really buy into them? No, really buy into them? Do we mean it? Has anybody got sick of them? Are they old? How many people in the organization know it? How many people believe it? How many people talk about it at their monthly one-to-ones? Which, by the way, do we even have them? But anyway, how many people are actually in throughout the organization? So this is not just, do we have a bit of paper? This is practically, how good are we at this purpose-orientated stuff? And then there goes the pause. Okay, assembled senior team. Can you give me your scores? Take 30 seconds or a minute, then enter your scores. Oh, and by the way, if anybody does go and do this, I almost always find there's one character in the team. Let's say you got 6 or 7 people in the room. There's quite often one character who will look at the titles of all this lot and then score the lot without even really understanding what any of them mean. And they've done their bit and they can kind of get on updating their Facebook or whatever it is. Well, so since I found that a few times, I've managed to add a little functionality in there which inhibits people doing that. But anyway, there's a little tip from the front line. Vision and mission. So Erica, that's the sort. Does that make sense to you in the stuff that you do? Okay. Values and ethos. This is around the culture of a business, how people are behaving. Do we have a deliberate set of values that we live by? Are we clear about how we feel to outside organizations, customers, suppliers, the community, all that kind of thing? And how are we behaving internally? Again, has everybody contributed to the statement of our values? Does everybody know them? Are they talked about? If people aren't behaving in a good, our business, our organization sort of way, do we take action in any way? I'm not saying about being nasty about it, but do we help people to act in the way that we think is the right way to work for our organization? Do we do all that stuff? Right, strategy and plans, the heart of what we here are good at. do we have clear goals? Not just sort of rubbishy, weaselly, wordy type goals, which nobody really understands. Are they specific goals that we're talking about? Do we understand our positioning, how we win against competitors, what's different about us and what makes us better, and why, frankly, any customer should actually choose us to buy their or use our services? And part of that, of course, do we have a set of initiatives? Are we using OKRs, maybe, throughout the organization, and so forth? I'm going to keep moving at a bit of a pace now. Hope that's okay with everybody. So, organization and people, huge topic, and very often languishing as a not very well performing thing. The HR function in an organization can be variously good or less so. Is there a clear structure with clear roles and responsibilities? Do people really know what they're responsible for? I'm not talking about in being a nasty sort of accusative finger blaming sort of way, but people do have to be clear about what they do and what they don't do. Are sometimes people straying into other responsibilities? Well, because this other chap here is not doing their job so terribly well, so I'm doing it for them a little bit, which is why my other stuff's going a little bit sideways. We have to be clear about that and make sure all those things are really clear. Are the people that we've got in our organization the right ones? Do they fit from a personality and a skills point of view? Do we need to start putting personal development plans in place? So that one is a huge one, and very rarely is it great. There's normally a lot of work to be done in that area. Shall I keep going, Erica? All right, really. Standardization. This is about, I mentioned this earlier, about are our products clear? What we offer or our services, are they clear? What the boundaries are? Do we have to get authority on an agreement from all other bits of our own organization before we offer something new? Or do we know exactly what we're offering? Is it just permutations of things? Is our pricing clear? And the processes by which we deliver those services, are they really clear? Are they mapped out? So again, you could actually, then there are underneath each of those several sub-elements that you can say, well, are they mapped out? Are they clear in swim lane maps? That sort of thing. Do we have the right infrastructure? In other words, anything from buildings with meeting rooms to equipment that we need. And do we have a quality management process in place and the right IT? So huge topic, but it's all shoehorned into one bit called standardization. And one thing you might find if you do anything like this with senior teams is that although standardization as a topic in general might be great, maybe there's been a lot of investment in IT or something, but actually our quality management systems and the way we handle corrective action plans is weak. So you might find standardization's okay. You've got to watch out and make sure you capture on a separate list any of the ones that are a bit outliers. Control, this is about the governance. Do we have metrics? Are we tracking them? Do we have monthly board meetings, monthly management meetings, quarterly strategy reviews? Do we have a risk register that we're tracking along like that? Are we clear about who can spend certain amounts of money? Engagement. Okay, so we've moved now. We've got the basics in place. We've got a foundation. We've got the structure and the fabric of the organization there. Now let's get this beast moving along. Engagement. Do people really understand where they are? The briefings could be daily if things are moving really fast. It could be weekly. In 6 months after startup, things are still a bit chaotic, but it's starting to settle. It could be monthly. Shouldn't be much less than quarterly, where either the most senior person in a building, for example, gets up and explains everything to everybody, obviously online as well. Meetings. Do we have meeting rooms? One-to-ones. Are there monthly one-to-ones? And not just catch up over coffee, but are the one-to-ones meaningful? Do they talk about how somebody is doing in their role? Are they talking about their personal development and helping them to get better? Not just have we delivered this person's services on time this week, and what are we doing about this little incy problem? These are meaningful one-to-ones that people. So anyway, how well are we engaging with our team, our whole team across our whole business, and how well aligned are they? Moving on to drive. So this is about making sure that everybody knows what the general speed of the train is going at. So is there a centralized or anyway sort of coordinated scheduling of activities that run from when a customer or service user wants something to when we actually start delivering it? Is the set of processes actually being managed on the way through? And have we got improvement initiatives in place that allow OKRs that have enough time to allow the individuals in the company to do them? And lastly, acceleration and agility, all these really good things, really great things that sometimes enlightened leadership teams get hold of, but quite often they don't have all the other bits in place yet. And so they're brilliant things. That top right acceleration piece is absolutely brilliant, but sometimes wasted because it's seeds going onto unfertile land. Let's have a look at that. Decentralization, putting responsibility for decisions right down to the front line. Great, fantastic, if that frontline person knows what they're doing and knows the context of what they're doing. Diversity of thinking. So have we got plenty of different viewpoints? Are we bringing in knowledge from our suppliers and so forth? And have we got structured innovation? And that is me on transmit there. So I hope I haven't sent you all to sleep. And we're just about there on time, I think, Erica, are we? Am I going to pass back to you?
Yeah, you know what? Let's pause on this for just a second. We do have 1 or 2 minutes, and then I'm going to wrap us up. But I just to pause, let us sink in on this. Jim is asking, and it's a good question. How do you cascade this in the organization with multiple sites? It appears this would be valuable for different business units to use this to score themselves, to align at the business unit level ideas. Do you agree with that? Have you done it that way?
Brilliant question. Superb. If you've got an organization that's got multiple sites, maybe some separate strategic business units, this is quite SBU orientated. So if you're trying to look at it as a holding group, this is only okay. This is mainly for a P&L unit, an income structured unit. So a strategic business unit works really well for this. Cascading it from, let's say, a centralized strategy function, it's the work of the strategy team, and they have to go out and educate / facilitate this approach here. Just sort of emailing it out and saying, off you go, chaps, go and do this. Well, I've never done that, and I would fear that it's not going to be great. I think you need to really have an enthusiastic, knowledgeable person that can talk through these 9 elements and make sure they're right, and be a good facilitator. I think in the previous session we were talking about how important facilitation is. Does that come anywhere near to answering that question?
I think it does, absolutely. And I think that really puts a fine point on this as well, which is the notion of this is about the conversation more than it is about the scoring, right? And so I think that that's a really powerful point, because we can have a conversation about the fact that, there's all sorts of like really intense assessments for all of these areas. And that's not what Bryan's getting at, right? I think, Bryan, you're really getting at, this is a really cool framework to get us thinking comprehensively about all the aspects of managing an organization well, and the leadership team getting aligned on what the priority areas are.
Yes, actually, and beautifully said. Thank you, Erica. I'd like to add one more bit there, that the most senior person in the organization really needs to be on board with doing this. Without their support and sponsorship, but with it, it's great. Everybody kind of feels they have to. And once they engage and the senior person is checking the engagement is there, encouraging further engagement, it's a superb process. I really enjoy using it. Is that right? The screen's just gone. Okay.
It has.
You got it? Okay, great. You got your, okay. So to have the most senior person sponsor / support this is really important. So if you are sort of finally on Jim's thing, you've got multiple strategic business units out there. The most senior person in each of those areas needs to be linked in. And it's almost a bit pointless running one of these processes unless they are on board with doing it. So what I'd suggest in a multiple SBU sort of organization, go to the one that's most difficult, persuade the chief exec or whatever the most senior person is of that SBU, to, especially because they're probably in a bit of trouble. They may well be reaching out for some help. My experience is they welcome this kind of thing, and it brings in tangible help from the strategy team.
That's awesome. So I'm going to wrap us up in 2 minutes, but before I do, can we just give Bryan a big round of applause? This work is hard, and he prepped this for all of us. So thank you so much, Bryan. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
And again, I would just open this up to everybody else too. If you have tools, best practices, stuff that's really working for you that this global community could benefit from, we want to make this platform available to you as well. Like, absolutely. So thank you, Bryan. So amazing. But he's not done. So he had said, out of the goodness of his heart, to offer running this assessment for 5 members that are the first 5 members who raise their hand and say our executive team would super benefit from this. So that information is going to hit your inbox in like an hour. It has to be done in the next 2 weeks, because we're going to then anonymously talk and workshop it on the 3rd Thursday. So it is for pro members, and it is please. And if you want this to be run with your organization, Bryan's willing to do that for you. And I just want to say, just really, one of our operating principles is we never solicit, right? So that's one of our operating principles, but it's really cool to share what those of us, what we're doing, right? So you can absolutely use these best practices yourself. You can also tap into Bryan, because Bryan does this for a living. So I'm gonna pimp his ride for him. But I also want to say that he is offering to do this for 5 leadership teams. If you think your leadership team could benefit from this, and your timing is good, you'll get a link in your email and you can sign up that way. So I just want to say that. And Bryan, thank you, because our time is our inventory, and that's so generous. So thank you. With that in mind, here's what's happening, everybody. Just 1 minute. The remaining pro sessions coming up this month, we're doing our Ask Us Anythings. Those are open mic. They are fantastic, by the way. Walk-on topics, super diverse. And then the 3rd Thursday, we're going to dig deeper into this. Upcoming, the June session is going to be KPIs, measures, metrics. I was saying like lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, I think I wanted to call it that. Anyways, it's all about driving results and reporting on those results and measuring those results. And so we're going to dig deeper into the reality of all that goodness. We're going dark in July because some of us need a summer break. That's what's happening. So the first Thursday in July is going to be dark, but the rest of the Thursdays we'll be doing Ask Us Anything for pro members. And then August is TBD. If you have something you think we should dig into on your mind, we would love to drop that topic in, because we want to make this again about helping you all in your areas of practice really fast. Invite a friend. That would be our ask. So if you have other colleagues that are working in this space, forward the post-session summary email, which you will get tomorrow. And really quickly, we've commented on all of this stuff, but yes, people have been asking, as always. We will be sending out a post-session email. Our colleague Natasha, she's on the call right now. She writes that for all of us. Thank you, Natasha. Super awesome. It's forwardable. All the slides will be there too. Bryan, thank you for sharing that. This is the summary. So you'll get the email, invite somebody. If there's something that you want to talk about, that's the email on the screen. So with that in mind, thank you so much. Have an amazing rest of the week. Bryan, thank you.
People are dropping off. If we have anybody hanging out here with a question, feel free to come off mute.
That's right. We'll hang out for a sec. Bryan, fantastic.
Actually, I just wanted to ask one thing, Ryan. Are we able to capture all of the chat that went through? Because obviously I didn't even look at any of it. I'd love to have a little read of what was going through.
Absolutely. I'll make sure I.
Oh,
capture
that'll
and
be
send it
grand
away,
if you
Bryan.
can. Thank you.
Sure.
Totally. And Ryan and Natasha, that one question that an individual asked about abstract thinking and strategic thinking, we should definitely drop that into the post-session summary. That was a really good question. And Bryan, we didn't get to talk about it too much, but the question was, how do you help executive teams shift from the individual didn't call it operational thinking, but operational thinking to strategic thinking or abstract thinking. And I think that's always a really good question. I particularly love the book Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. The title, terrible title, fantastic book. But at the end of that book, there's a really cool strategic thinking exercise.
Is there? Right.
Yeah.
Real quick, just
amazing, but it's great. So yeah.
Just hop it in. So we'll cover that in the post session. Brett, I see you're off mute. If you got a question, go ahead and jump in. We actually had another one just in chat if we want to cover those. Go for it, Brett.
I was just curious about differences for nonprofit organizations, if there's any distinctions that you've seen as you've run this, or as other people have done similar types of assessments in business versus nonprofit.
Is that one for me? Yeah, sure.
You or Erica?
Okay. Yeah, sure. All right. I'll go. Shall I go first, or do you want to go first, Erica? I'll go first, and then you give the real answer. All right. No is a short answer. It's extremely simple. What I do find with nonprofits is they're a little bit more collegiate and more cooperative amongst themselves, which is nice, obviously. I guess some folks in nonprofits sometimes are part-timers, and that just means organizing stuff is a little bit of a pain. But no, the basic thinking is identical. What is the future need? Whatever nonprofit organization is doing, they're doing something for some people, and those people then are going to have needs that change. So it's not a competitive marketplace the way you see in a business world, but you're seeing needs change, and that means they've got to be aware of Horizon 2 thinking. That's fine. But in Horizon 1, which is a lot of this business management framework stuff, this is about getting a combined view, a mechanism for bringing out people's views, aligning them, and then deciding as a collective, what do we do first, folks? Or what work streams should we put into place for development over the coming year? So no, I personally think that the process is very, very similar. There you go, Erica. Now you can get the real answer from Erica.
No, not at all. I totally agree. And I only think that sometimes at nonprofit. So the other components of social sector work, I think government and education, I do think sometimes the tweaking of the language around strategy is important to just be a little bit more.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
It never seems to resonate quite as much, but that's just a personal opinion, but I'm with you. I agree with everything that you said, Bryan. So totally. And then I'm not sure if Mr. or Mrs. John, I'm not sure how to say your name, but you're asking, when should one do the assessment, quarterly or is it annual?
Ooh, I think quarterly would probably.
Thank you.
Sorry, tell me how to pronounce your name correctly.
Annie John. I'm Nigerian. Yes. Thank you.
Annie. Thank you. I just didn't know. It's so important to pronounce everybody's names correctly. So thank you so much.
Very much.
Yes.
Grateful.
Fantastic. And so Bryan, Annie is asking quarterly or annually.
Sorry, Annie, did you earlier on say you were from Lagos?
Oh yes, I am. I am in Lagos. I'm a Nigerian. Yes. And
I spent the first 2 years of my life in Lagos. I don't remember it.
Wonderful.
Anyway, right, so no, I think quarterly would be too often. My experience is things don't change that fast, and you get assessment fatigue. Probably though, because if you remember, there were 8 different assessments, the purpose one, and then 7 in the ring. The other ones, for example, if you are in a profit business, then the sales one, or if it's a non-profit, demand, for example, that is quite functional orientated. You might run it at the exec level, or you might run it as in some other bit of the organization. So you can use the different ones at different times, but I would have thought over assessing is a bit of a problem. Annually, I'd say probably at most. But not much less. But so annually is a short answer, is what I would say. What about you, Erica? What do you think?
Totally agree. Yep. I agree with you on the assessment overload, and I think the timing on this is really critical. So absolutely, for sure. Any other questions, everybody? If you're hanging out, you might have a question. Otherwise, and you're more than welcome to come off mute.
Can I just carry on Annie's question there, in that some things need to be tracked more frequently? So, for example, the pulse of your organization and the engagement of staff, there's quite a lot of nice little apps around that do sort of a very simple, very short little pulse feel of how people are and how they're feeling and how they're being treated. Those things are quite legitimately frequently assessed. I think after a period of time, everybody gets assessment fatigue, even on those ones. But multiple little touches like that. So I have no connection with an outfit called Tiny Pulse, but that's the one that I've seen being used, and it's really cool. And the senior team published the results from that. I'm sure there's many other versions like that, but you can do some simple assessments with multiple little questions coming out every week, for example, and then you can see how different bits of the organization and different movement of initiatives that you're maybe putting into place might drive satisfaction. But you also mustn't forget the Hawthorne effect, also now more frequently now called the quantum effect, which is when you examine something, it normally changes. And particularly in an organizational sense, if you start measuring and tracking something, the participants are often aware that they're being tracked, and things get better anyway. It might not stay better for very long if you don't do something differently, but the very act of measuring, this is the Hawthorne effect, the very act of measuring it improves things. So watch out for that effect.
That's true too. That's right. We are big fans of Office Vibe, but similar. Like,
right.
We also have no affiliation. Like, none of that. But those are great tools, and that's a little different of a purpose, though. In your point, right? That's assessing and keeping the pulse on the employee piece, and then of course this assessment is really that management piece, which is fantastic. So it looks like we're kind of through all of our questions. So Bryan, that means you get to just peace out and have a really amazing afternoon, because that was a lot. So thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I believe of course, we'll be sharing your contact information. That is okay, correct? In the post-session summary?
Oh, sorry. I'm really sorry. I tuned out.
No, that's okay. I just want to make sure we have your authorization to share your email in the post-session summary.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah, by all means. Yes.
Okay.
Of course, no problem. I just looked the last in chat, which I'm now looking at, from Taffy. You can also do this through leadership rounding. What is leadership rounding?
It's just a scheduled rounds where, like, check-ins almost. So you schedule all the different leaders to go to different areas. So they're not just rounding with their own teams. And some people tend to open up better that way, and you get a real feel for what's going on.
I see. Great. Thank you. Yeah.
But, they need to be coached a little bit too, the executives.
Yes.
So
they
need to know what they're asking. And to understand why they're asking it, but it does help, and it helps them see a different perspective on their area.
Yeah, and you hit a really good point there, Taffy, because quite often the personalities and the behavior of the most senior people can undermine any of this good stuff instantly. So some of the folk in the top teams quite often just need interpersonal skills training,
right?
How to behave, how to interact. Otherwise they do more harm than good.
Oh yeah, and I've seen that too. But on what you were going over today, that is really good at a executive level. But if they take those same worksheets and work them from a department level, and then kind of take it up. Like, these are what's important to us at the department level or the frontline level. And they take all this massive amount of stuff, they whittle that down, and then it goes to the next level as like, these would be our recommendations. This is why. So they're kind of, they're doing the hard work, the hard lifting at the foundation level. And it also gives you a pulse on what is going on in that unit or that department. And it can kind of tell you why your numbers or what have you are the way they are because of the culture or the pulse that you're getting at the time.
And
but
in that
as
example, did you facilitate those in more junior interactions?
I do, and I encourage the frontline staff to be at on committees and things like that. So you're getting end user feedback from the get-go. It doesn't go around in this big circle or have executives at the top making decisions that are affecting the end user, and there is a huge disconnect.
Yeah.
So they're wondering, why aren't they doing what we've told them to do? Well, maybe it just can't happen.
Yeah. And also what you're pointing out there, and then I think we'll wrap it up, is sometimes we need to remember the human outreach, not just the digital outreach.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the nice way to kind of put a asterisk and an underline.
Yeah. But that way too, once you get it all up to executive leadership, there's not as much legwork left to be done. There's more of we can take our time to make the decisions.
Yeah.
And see where we really truly are right now and where we want to go and find those gaps quickly. So
fantastic.
Nice one.
Thank you,
Brilliant.
Bryan.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
what
you,
a pleasure.
everybody.
What a privilege.
That's right. Enjoy the rest of your day or your evening, wherever you are. And